Let's see. I can see myself on the screen. I hope that everyone can see me. And Nancy, if you're there, I hope that you can hear me. Unfortunately, I'm unable to hear you. Okay. Hello. Nancy, I don't know if you will be asking me questions. I can certainly see the camera. I can't hear anyone. If I don't hear anyone who is going to be speaking on this, I'm just going to speak directly to the questions that we have here, and I hope that this works well for you. With that, I'd like to say thank you for this opportunity to be here. This has been something that I do ongoing with many different women's groups who have an interest in running for office and encouraging their membership to consider running for office. So I'm delighted that I was asked to do this. I certainly hope that I can encourage you to consider this, and at the very least to consider getting more civically engaged, because what you do has an impact in your community, and also what you may not do can also have an impact. So I'm hoping at the end of the day this will prove helpful. The first question I was asked in preparation for this training is, how do you run for office in a community? And while certainly there are some administrative aspects to running for office and technical elements of what the specific mechanics you should do to run for office and to be successful in doing that, there are also some practical elements that you should consider. I'm going to start with the practical elements first, because I think it's important to have a strong base or foundation in determining whether or not this is something that is right for you to do. One of the first things I think that you should consider when you're going to run for office is your credibility to do so. And that may seem like an intimidating aspect to consider, but when you start peeling back the layers of what credibility is, it certainly is not impossible to get over that hurdle. One of the first things you want to consider when running for office is, do you have any experience serving? Whether it's in church, whether it's on your HOA board, whether it's on a school PTA, or do you volunteer for assignments at work? What is your history when it comes to serving? Running for elected office, some people may think that politics is a different space than serving, but I think they're one and the same. I would like to consider myself a public servant, and that is important, I think, for anyone who wants to be successful in this realm to capture. So make sure you have a track record of service, and that will help to build your credibility. A second thing that could be helpful is, in addition to serving, do you have experience advocating in an area? I still think serving is very important, because with that comes a level of understanding of how to interact with different people with a sense of humility. We're advocating for something, you're pushing for a cause that can make a difference in people's lives. But I think that is best balanced when you have had some experience serving. But certainly those who are advocates, they are people who have put themselves out there to make a difference. And I think both of those are good qualities to help give you credibility in this arena. Something else I think that is also important if you're running for office is, have you been involved in the civic arena? I know I stated that serving is important, but certainly serving in the realm of which you choose to lead is also important. And if you're running for a local seat, I'm on a county commission, which is considered a local seat. Have you had any experience advocating and serving in any of those arenas? Have you advocated for new development? Have you addressed a zoning case which addresses new development? Have you advocated for sidewalks? Have you served for cleaning up the medians and the areas on the side of the street through Keep Cobb Beautiful? There are different ways of serving and advocating in civic life that will help bring credibility to your desire to run for office. Sometimes, I talk to people and they're fired up because their call comes out of them being tired of being sick and tired. And that certainly is something that can compel one to run, but it certainly does not make one credible to run. So I think advocating for a cause and volunteering in a civic capacity helps to build that credibility. Lastly, I think it's important to know, who are you? Do you have a good sense of self? Having the ability to not only serve, but to serve with a level of awareness about what you bring to the table helps to add credibility. And there's all of those together work to build credibility, in addition to something that I think is very important, which is to be knowledgeable about what you are running for. It is disheartening to know this happens probably in every election cycle. Someone is going to run for a position and not know if they are running in the right area. And to me, this is an instant credibility killer, because you could be serving in a civic arena, advocating for a cause, having a great sense of self and be involved. But if you don't know that you should be running in District 2 instead of District 3, this can be an instant credibility killer, because you do not know the capacity of which you would be contributing in that role. So all of these things, I think, work together to make someone seem like a solid candidate for running for office. In addition to that, another practical element of running for office includes having the right support system. And getting back to my answer about credibility, one of the first support systems you have is you, right? Having, a sense of self, knowing who you are, goes a long way to you being able to serve and to know that you can lean on yourself. Because when you put yourself out there are going to be arrows that come, because you're going to be elevated in a sense for everyone to see you. When there are a lot of people around and you're at eye level, it's hard to kind of get past the mass of people because we're all in each other's way. But once somebody elevates themselves to service, then they not only are in an honorable position, but they're expected to act with some sense of honor, with some sense of credibility about the things that they do. And with that can be a great thing, but as many positive things that come with that, there can be some challenges that come with that. So the first support system is yourself and your faith. For me, I know I'm the organizer of this program, Miss Nancy, through our going to church together at Destiny, and I've always admired her faith. And I'm not saying that there are not good leaders that we may know of that may not express themselves in this arena. But I think for a person who has a strong sense of self, having a strong sense of faith is a very important aspect or characteristic of who we are. Because when you can only lean on yourself for this much, your faith is going to take you even further. And it will help to ground you in times where we all can feel as if we've just been imbalanced or taken off of our footing. So it's important to me to have faith. And you don't necessarily have to be a leader in church. You don't have to be someone who people go to run for a scripture or for a prayer. But you should know that even that small mustard seed faith can grow if you have faith, even in the little faith that you do have, that it could be multiplied. And it could go a long way towards grounding you when you take the arrows of running for office. Something else that's also important is having the support of family. When I ran for office, it was a family affair. As much as you are sacrificing, your family may also be sacrificing. Certainly your husband or your spouse, your children, they're seeing less of you. They're seeing you go through the challenges of running for office. They're going through that too. They're not probably able to spend as much time with you, or even in the time that you have together, you may not be the same person if you're having to deal with things. My children have gotten there, at least I don't think they've gotten used to it. I have two children, ages 9 and 11, and we get stopped in the supermarket. We get stopped wherever we go. We can just be outside. We could be going on a walk. And my children are not as frustrated by this, but to them, they still can't understand, once that meeting is done, why mommy can't just come and give her attention to us. Why is she still talking to people? And even at home, I've had to learn at first to compartmentalize my life in a sense, but then I've learned, because things can be ongoing, that I prioritize things more so than I compartmentalize things, because things can be occurring at all times. And sometimes I have to learn not to pick up the phone, not to check that email, not to go to that meeting, but sometimes I have to do that. And so it's a constant sacrifice, and having the support of family to begin with is important. If you are going into an election and your marriage isn't the best, if you have a child that's in need of you and needs a little bit of attention, for whatever things be going on in their life, you want to factor those things in, because certainly you don't want those things to become detractors to you having a solid footing for running. But also in this public space, those type of challenges in one's personal life can be made public quickly. And unless your family is one where they don't mind seeing their personal business out on, for the public to consume, you really want to try to make sure you have those things tight, or at least a way that, if something isn't going right in those areas, that you can get that right offline. Something else that's very important, financial strength and financial support. At most offices, unless you're running for Congress and above, don't pay very much. In fact, you are giving a lot more of your life than you will get in return. For someone who's running for state office here, I think their annual salary is like $16,000, which is comparable to someone who's serving as your school board member. For the commission, our roles are considered part-time, but I could be doing this every day, all day, and still not do enough for constituents. And we get paid about $48,000 to $50,000, depending on where we are with training. For ACCG, which is an annual commissioner's training program for those serving here in the state of Georgia. So you really want to make sure you have a strong financial footing, because you will still need to make ends meet. And I think a lot of times people get sick and tired of hearing elected officials take advantage of different financial opportunities. And I tell you, if you don't have a strong financial footing, along with a strong personhood and faith and support of family and friends, you could be tempted to do things that you would not otherwise do, and take advantage of scenarios that you would not take advantage of. So be careful of that. And sometimes people may not have your best interest at heart, but sometimes people do, and you still could be tempted. I remember early in my days as a commissioner, and a business offered to pay a medical expense because they were a medical business. And they said, oh, we can just write that off. We do that all the time. And something felt very uncomfortable about it. I just felt that it was crossing a line for me and my family, that this was something that we need to take care of. I didn't want anybody to ever have me in a position where I felt like I owed them something other than serving. And being trained in the legal profession, you learn a lot about conflict of interest, and it was an immediate conflict for me. So I chose not to do that. But I could see someone who's struggling to make ends meet in a business saying, look, I really support you. You're doing great work. Just let me write this off. I'm used to doing that. And you go ahead and let them write it off. And next thing you know, you have other people doing things for you that could start to blur the lines of what is ethically appropriate. So again, I think I've been talking this whole time with a muted mic. I just saw something say my mic was muted, and I hope that's not the case. Um, I do want, again, to let you know how important it is, again, to have a strong financial footing and to have a strong family support, to have a strong faith support, to know where you are personally so that you do not have to worry about temptations that can come. So again, we talked about what does it take? We know it takes credibility. Again, you want to know that you've served in an area, that you've had that heart of humility and working for others, that you have some experience advocating for fighting for a cause, that you've been involved in a civic space, that you know what's going to be entailed in this position that you're going to run for, and know who you are. And then you also want to be knowledgeable about your position. What district are you serving for? What type of decisions are you going to make? This is important. You don't ever want to run for something and realize that you are not even in a position to run for it because you don't know your district. Lastly, you want to make sure, again, you have support, faith, family, friends, financial. Why did I run in 2012? What ultimately pushed me over, I have a question that's coming up here, and I'm going to go ahead and answer that before I go into the next point. If you're a business owner, is it realistic to believe that you can run for local office and still run a business? Many do. It depends on how you want to serve. I have a close girlfriend who was a judge and ran for a local commission. And she set the level of expectation of her commissioners to, of her constituents. So they knew that she wasn't always going to be present. But what she did is she had a very strong assistant. And while she could not be responsive to things on a day-to-day basis, her assistant could be. Her assistant met with people that came in the office. And for her, that worked. And it worked so well that 4 years later, she decided to run for judge, and she was successful in that pursuit. I think it's possible, but I think that you are going to want to make sure that you have a very strong support system that can be responsive to your constituents. Also, I think it's very important that you still take time to be knowledgeable about the decisions that you're going to make as an elected official. If you're not present, you still are responsible for making policy decisions. And so it's going to be important that you take time to be read up on things that are going on. If you've had to reach out to others that you're serving with to find out what the pulse is, not only of your constituents, but other stakeholders involved in the matter, you want to take time to do that because your number one priority is, as an elected official, is to ensure that you are making sound decisions. You can be replaced as far as being responsive to constituents. I used to be an intern for the governor's office of planning and budget, and they used to have a constituent affairs office where they had multiple interns and employees that would respond to people when they had issues. People can help with that, but they cannot, there's no one that could be trained to push that button to vote for something or to vote against something. You are not replaceable in that element of service. So it's very important that you become aware of the decisions that you're going to make and make solid decisions. So the short answer is yes, you can do it, but you're going to have to find some way to be dedicated to both your business and to your constituents and to your responsibility as a decision maker. And let's get to the business. If you are serving, but things in your business start to flounder, please understand that could be fodder for public consumption. You're in a public role where all eyes are on you. And so if things aren't going well on the work front, you can't believe somebody could draw attention to it. So as you're looking for people who can help you at whatever elected role you're in, you're going to want to make sure that you have somebody helping you on the work front. I mentioned being an attorney. I'm not practicing, but I have some friends who are practicing and also serving in office. Sometimes they have to give cases to other people or make sure they have a strong legal assistant that can step in where they can't. You just want to make sure that you're tight in all aspects. Another thing I wanted to address are the strengths or characteristics needed for running for office. And I think I addressed that a bit in the credibility piece. But I think it's very important that, again, you have that strong sense of self. I think faith goes a very long way. And that ties into one of the next important elements is to simply be a person that cares about others. If you are not a people person, and if people, just the general nature of people drives you crazy, this is probably not the role for you, because you will be a representative of people expected to help people and make decisions on behalf of people to help people. And it amazes me how many times I may run into people that seem as if they just don't like people. Now, there's some people who, again, they're advocates. I talked about that as far as credibility. And advocating for a cause is good. But we also talked about balancing that with service. We are public servants. And I think that element of people in office is becoming less and less every day. The fact that we have been called to serve on behalf of others. So it's important that you care about people. It's almost even better when you care about people as yourself. Because the things that you want to do to protect yourself and your community should be the things that you consider when someone is coming to you in need of assistance. Something else I talked about, again, on credibility is just having a strong knowledge base or being willing to learn. You don't have to have 5 degrees to run for office, but you do need to know something about what you're doing, or be willing to ask people to help you. There's people come into elected office in all walks of life, and you're going to be serving and helping people of all walks of life. So having the ability to hear from people and to learn from people goes a long way. Another thing that I think is important is to have courage. Sometimes I think this is also lacking, that yes, we serve on behalf of people, but sometimes we do need to step up and lead. And we lead sometimes from behind and serving and lifting others up. But sometimes we need to take people to a place that can best help them in a way that is compassionate towards them, and do some things that people may not have done before because they may have been difficult, because they may put them in a position to receive criticism because nobody's ever done it that way. But I think without courage, there are many temptations for you not to serve in the best interest of others. So I would encourage anyone who's going to run to know how to exercise in that ability to have courage, to be brave. And not only do I think you should be considerate of others, but you have to know how to work with others. I can't think of any monarchy type elected position that we have in the United States. We all are working in the midst of a body where typically there has to be a majority to move policy forward. And that requires collaborating and working with others. And sometimes a lot of us get encouraged to run because something may be unique about us that sets us up in leadership, where people defer to our opinion, and we may not have to work as much with a lot of people. But the strongest leaders that I've seen have a sense of humility and almost being able to become less so their team can become more. And that requires working with people, respecting other people's opinion, but still not taking away from what you bring to the table. So I spoke about some things from a character perspective, credibility, support. Those are some of the practical things that I think that you should know. Some things from a technical or administrative perspective. If you want to run for office, you literally will need to file to run for office. And if you're running for a local office, you can go to Cobb Elections or cobbcounty.org/elections, and there will be forms there for you to fill out to run for office. If you want to run for state office, you would go to the state ethics page, and there'll be forms there for you to fill out called a declaration of intent, and that will allow you to be able to run for office. I've never run for federal office, and I can't tell you what website or what agency is responsible for that, but I'm pretty sure you can Google it, and there more than likely will be some type of form you'll need to fill out to technically be able to run for office. Another technical aspect that you should be aware of is you typically have to live in the district or post that you're running for to run for that position. I think that may not be the case at the federal level, but it's certainly the case at the local level, that you'll want to live in that area, and you may need to have lived there for a certain period of time. I think for my local position, I had to have lived in Cobb or in the district I'm running for a year. And so that is really the administrative piece, but there's also another technical piece of running for office. If you ever thought of running for office, I like asking people, what do you think running for office is? When someone's running for office, is it about putting out signs, having T-shirts, kissing babies, being in a parade, giving lots of speeches? Is it about going to every dinner, going to every event? I think those are some elements of running, but those are not the main aspects of running for office. To run for office, it's important to reach your voter, because at the end of the day, what makes someone able to not just run for office, but to win an office is to get 50% plus one of the vote. And 50% plus one of the vote of the people who are in the post or in the ward or in the district that you're running for, they are not going to all the dinners. They are not going to all the events. Not all of them have babies to be kissed. Not all of them will have yard signs, because you can't afford yard signs for all of them. But they all can go to the poll and vote if they're 18 and registered to vote. What's most important is that you are able to reach the voter, and you are able to reach 50% plus one. I see a lot of people who are out running for office, and they think running for office is what they see, those flashy elements that you may perceive constitute a run for office. And a lot of times those efforts will only get you about 10 to 20% of the votes. There's a saying that yard signs don't vote, T-shirts don't vote, people do. So your stock should be in people. And again, if you've had that track record of credibility of serving with people, advocating for people, you probably start to know a lot of people. But still, there's a lot more that are coming to the polls. My election at the primary level, I hope you're going to vote in the primary coming up June 9th if you haven't sent in your absentee ballot. But most people running for office, they can constitute up to 10,000 people. I don't personally think I know 10,000 people, but I can try to knock on as many of their doors as possible. To me, that personal direct voter contact is very important. You can send mail out. You can call them. People who, again, may not be out at those mainstream things because they are wrapped up in putting food on the table, a roof over their head, and taking care of their families. Those are where most of the voters are and what they're doing. So I think it's important that you think about reaching those people. And again, that's not with you dressing up and drinking wine with your finger in the air. That's you walking door to door. That's you putting in some footwork, sweating. That's you sitting in a room with a phone and you making a lot of calls. Is that sweat equity that's going to result in the greatest return for a run for office, more so than anything else. Another technical thing, and this is probably the best advice I was ever given, and what I told you before about what you see on the outside versus that sweat equity piece, it doesn't seem to really make sense. But it was for going to campaign trainings that I learned those things. Um, when I was deciding to run, I didn't know that a woman that I used to see at the gym every day was actually in politics, and she helped people run for office. And for some reason, she and I were just having small talk, and it came up that I was going to run. And she called me and she said, Lisa, I want you to make sure that if you're going to run for office, you're not only going to go to one campaign training, but you're going to go to two. So I think getting educated and knowledgeable about what you're getting ready to do is important, to know the technical elements of it, or else you'll be doing all the glossy outward things and not doing much to move yourself towards a win. Because you're not just running for office, you are running to win in office. So, running is not separate from winning. If you're going to put yourself out there and your family out there, you want to win. And so going to training will teach you the core elements of what it takes to be successful in this arena. I would not have thought that I would be losing 10 pounds in my run for office by literally knocking on every door of a voter that I could. I would not have thought that I didn't need to have my yard signs on every corner or at every home to win and for people to think that I was the best candidate until I went to campaign training. I wouldn't have known that that personal touch with the voter is more important than being at events and giving speeches and having a fancy email campaign. I wouldn't have known that unless I went to campaign training. So if there's one thing I can encourage you to do is become a student of what it takes to win. I've been invited to different legal events to educate people on how to run for office. I've been invited to other professional settings to talk about running for office of people who have done very well in their professional career. And I can't tell them how important it is for the amount of time that it took for them to learn about their profession and to excel in it is comparable to the amount of effort that you are going to need to learn about what it takes to run for office to win. There are people who've studied this. You don't have to learn about this on your own. There are even books that can teach you if you can't find a good training, even though I think training is one of the best ways from hearing from people to learn about this. But please get trained, understand what it takes to not only run, understand what it takes to win. I think I beat all of that with a dead, I beat that horse to death, on what it takes to run. I want to turn this a little bit to me. Why did I run? Back in 2012, I ended up running because a lot of people came up to me and said, you should run for office. And in fact, that preceded the 2012 election. That came up in 2008, where I had people approach me about running for office. I was active in my HOA. I was active with a civic organization nearby. I had helped advocate for land use and zoning and knocked on neighbors' doors to let them know when new development was coming nearby. I worked in development with a multifamily affordable housing developer, so I knew about the development side a bit. I had interned for the governor's office of planning and budget. I ended up working as a policy analyst, and I just think I started to do things that gave me some credibility in how I operated in my community. But even in 2008, I didn't think this was for me to do. I thought, hey, I volunteer. I work at the grassroots level to help people. My first degree was in engineering. So, I thought this work was something you did on the side. Getting back to that question about being a business owner and running for office, I was about my profession, my work, and these were things that I did on the side. But all of a sudden, my interest in what was going around in my community, my interest in how I can help change the outcome of that, started weaving into different professional choices I was making. And as one of my bosses said, Lisa, I think when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Once I made my commitment that I wanted to do more civically, I started to have opportunities come my way that I could have never fathomed. And I think people began to notice that I addressed things uniquely in my community, and people began to ask me to do it. I was not necessarily convinced at first. I chose to go to law school. I chose to also get a master's in public administration because I said, maybe I'll just start a nonprofit to teach people how to run for office. Or maybe I'll get involved in the policy side so I can help certain communities know how to navigate the land use and zoning process better in my community. I did not think that I would ever be in this position. But as more and more people started to ask me, I started to see that people believed in me, and I didn't necessarily believe in myself, but I believed our community needed something more than what we were getting. I lived in the Six Flags area of Cobb County. My husband and I moved here because that's great access to everything. He and I were both engineers when we first moved in our home. I was working in Lawrenceville. He was in Sandy Springs, and we could both get to our jobs a quick, fast, and in a hurry off of the interstate, which is about 3 minutes away from our home. And if you wanted to be in Atlanta, we could be in Atlanta in about 5 to 10 minutes if we wanted to from our home in the Six Flags area. And so the accessibility, also the affordability of my community made me want to come here. But I realized that this was not the same Cobb County that I knew when I was a student going to Georgia Tech and I had lived in East Cobb. The level of service and development were not the same. And my husband had lived in the Cumberland area, was also taken by just the differences in what we saw. And so as others began to believe in me, it literally took people pushing me to eventually do this. And when I ran, I just never looked back. I was an athlete back in high school, and I always thought, if I'm going to train for something, I train to win. And so I think a little bit of that competitive spirit came out. Also, that servant spirit. And growing up and even in college, and even I was working as an engineer, I was involved in student council. I was my senior class president. I was in Interact, which is a youth subset of Rotary Club. I was on my judiciary committee at Georgia Tech. I was president of my African American Student Union. When I got my first engineering job at Kodak, I went and spoke to students in high schools. I was just used to always doing things civically. I just never perceived, again, this could be the core of something that I did. Serving was just something that I did. But when I ran, it was just important to me that I run to win. And by following those steps that I told you about to be successful in running for office, when you go door to door and knock on those doors and you're visiting people and looking in their eye and speaking with them face to face and hearing about their concerns, I wanted to run in such a way where I did not let them down. And when I got elected, I wanted to serve in a way where I did not let them down. So for me, it took the support of others for me to become a champion of others, realizing that there was an element of service along the way. I have shifted. I've been serving as a commissioner for 8 years. I'm now interested in running for chair of Cobb County. I think it's time to step up in leadership in Cobb, not only for the amount of experience that I've had in serving, but the way that I've served in trying to be a champion, yes, for District 4 where I serve, but for all people in Cobb. The same character that it takes to run for office, caring about others, serving others, advocating for others, that can be applied to everything. And I've done my best in my role as a commissioner to apply that in every matter that comes before us as a board. Because even though you might be a district commissioner or you might be a school board member for a post, you are making decisions for the whole body. And I have cared about the whole body of Cobb as we try to move this part of the county forward. And I believe it's important for leadership in Cobb to care about all of the people in Cobb, and not just for today, but to look at how we are positioning Cobb to be successful in the future for all people in Cobb. The issues that my husband and I saw here in the Six Flags area in District 4 would not have been issues, I think, if leadership was looking out for all of Cobb. Some of the equity issues that we see being painfully uncovered with COVID-19, or even some of the painful scenes that we're seeing about Black men losing their life at the hand of others in such a cold and cruel way, I think reflects a lack of equity about how we care about all people. And if it doesn't start at the top, then even the gaps in how we consider or don't consider people start to fray as you go and move down within an organization. And I realized that for me to see the change that I think that our county deserves, I could not just be advocating that from this position. I had to be up here to work with more people who believed in that, to let that permeate throughout our organization. I'm excited about this run because I think there are a lot of others here in Cobb who've been helping to lead, who see that future for us. But we need someone who can help pull all of that together. And I believe that my heart and my experience will qualify me to do that, which is why I'm running for office. But again, not taking anything else away from the other aspects of being a policymaker and a decision maker. I just think that we need to be a policy and decision maker for all people and look at things through that lens. I wholeheartedly believe that more people should consider running for office, that when the student, as I said before, when the student comes, the teacher will appear. If you are ready to move into this realm, I think you'd be amazed at the level of support that you could attract. For me, when I see someone that has an interest in serving, and I see them serving in multiple areas that I think could lend themselves to serving in a local capacity, I seek them out. And in fact, there's someone running for my seat in the district as I run for chair. I sought her out because I saw her at everything, doing everything. And I asked her, I said, are you interested in running for office? Because the things that I see you doing would certainly build a strong foundation of running, because she was not only involved in service, but she was doing some of the civic things and advocating in those civic arenas that made me think she's positioning herself a little bit differently than I see others out here in the community. And to be honest, I was shocked to hear this was not even on her radar. She thought, she just wanted to learn how to serve, and she wanted to serve. And it's transformed in her now running for office. So I certainly want to encourage people to run. I do a lot of training at a lot of different events because I want to spark something in someone to let you know that we need you. If you're someone that cares about others, we need you. If you're someone that's willing to advocate for others, we need you. If you're a servant and serve with that servant's heart, we need you. If you care about equity, we need you. These are all important elements of running for office. And I seek that out. And for those of you who may think I have this little seed in me, I'm not sure what to do with it, this can be something for you. But again, if you want to move forward in this manner, by all means, please consider training. Because it's one thing to have the heart and have some elements of running for office. You want to be trained in what you're doing. I have a few more things to wrap up in, and if there are any additional questions, I'll answer it, or we'll wrap up from here. If you live in Cobb County or just in the state of Georgia, you know that our primary is coming up on June 9th. If you have not taken the time to vote, please do. The Secretary of State for our state of Georgia has sent out absentee ballots to every registered voter because of the limited number of workers that we are having in the county. Hold on one second. I have a child here. Sorry about that. We again, with shelter in place, we have limited poll workers that are coming to work. We have limited poll sites. The lines may be longer because we're trying to distance people. So it's important for us to make sure we are still providing access to the polls for people and are encouraging people to vote by mail-in ballot. So please do so. We have early voting going on right now. You can visit cobbcounty.org/elections to learn about where you can go and cast an in-person ballot. But the last day to vote is going to be June 9th, and we need your participation in this effort to make sure that we have the leadership that we know that we need to not only represent us at the local level, but also at the state and federal level. But don't be mistaken. There's so much interest sometimes at the federal level. I don't think people realize how critical it is to be to be involved at the local level. So please make sure you vote in this upcoming election, and then again, vote again in November so that you are voting in the general election, which will determine who is the final winner of most of these seats that will have people who will be serving on your behalf. With that, I thank you. Thank you for those of you who tuned in. I thank you for the time that you spent to learn about running for office. I certainly thank Ms. Nancy Lee for giving me this opportunity to share with you about my journey in running for office and some things that I have observed. I think that if there's anything you could take away from this is knowing that your civic leaders make a difference in everyone's life, and you can make a difference too by getting out and voting, but by also looking at how you can step up and become a decision and policy maker for your community. But with that, thank you so much. I'm going to click over here on live comments to see if there are any more questions. I don't see any. If there are no more questions, I'm going to wrap up, but I'll give you just a couple minutes more if anybody wants to get any more questions in. Oh, thank you for that comment. Thank you. Well, thank you again for your time today. If you want to learn more, just reach out to me directly. You can always reach me at lisa@cupidforcobb.org. That's lisa@cupidforcobb.com. Thank you and take care.